Hey everybody, I'm Lavallo, and before I turn 30 in less than 2 weeks, I am doing a series where I remember each year of my 20s and I reflect back on it, all the lessons that I had, and all the successes and failures and everything about that. So today I am going to relive the 23rd year of my life, what I did when I was 23. So this is from September 2013 to September 2014. And in a lot of ways, this year was pretty standard because there's a lot that didn't change at all in the year. I had one job, I was working at McKinsey. I lived in one place, I was living in Abu Dhabi. But because of the way that I generally live my life and also the way that that job was, there wasn't a lot of consistency at all. And kind of looking back at what is the main point of that year, the main lesson that I learned, it was a year of some really, really high professional highs and some really low professional lows. And then it got back to some professional highs. So it was a roller coaster, and that kind of affected me emotionally throughout the entire year. And it also taught me a lot about the way to look at your career and to look at the work that you're doing. So the reason why I had that kind of roller coaster professionally is that I went into consulting really wanting to have an impact in economic development and wanting to work on the social sector and the public sector and looking at development projects. And McKinsey was doing a lot of these, and I was really lucky to get to do a lot of them with them. But there's also times where I was prevented from doing some really, really great projects, and for very little reason at all. Later on, kind of the issues that happened in this year, I got apologized to for, and that makes me feel a little bit better that I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't in the wrong, but it was hard going through it. So I started the year really on a high because I was working for one of the region's biggest NGOs. And that was really awesome. My 23rd birthday, the CEO of this huge NGO, one of the most powerful women in the Middle East, bought me my birthday cake. And it was this really exciting kind of time to turn 23. And it was also that same day on my birthday, we had this really important meeting. And I remember that I was sitting across from the CEO, and because of the way a management change had happened, I was even though I was an analyst, I was the one presenting the strategy. And at one point she asked me, what does McKinsey think about this? And I realized that she was asking my opinion, and that my opinion meant way more than Lavallo, that I represented an entire organization. And to be giving that kind of feedback at such a young age to such an important entity was really amazing. And so that's how I kind of turned 23, was during that meeting, literally. And then my next project was an even bigger, one of the world's biggest philanthropic organizations and development organizations. And they were interested in doing a GCC strategy. And so I was able to travel all around the GCC doing these interviews in Kuwait, in Qatar, and Saudi, all across the UAE. And then we had to go to London to present it. And that was a really exciting time for me again to be building a Middle Eastern entry strategy for one of the world's biggest NGOs, and to have the support of the whole office and entity around me. And actually the strategy that we gave to that company, I was told 5 years later, was completely implemented and they still used our work. And so that was exciting to really know that we had that kind of impact. So I was traveling a lot just for work, traveling around the GCC for that one project. And then, when I traveled to London, I decided to take a couple weeks right afterwards. And I also went to Germany right before the trip, and I stayed with my family there. Then I went to visit my friends in Norway. And then I did my first ever big Balkan road trip. So I went from Croatia to Mostar in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I went into Montenegro and into Macedonia and into Albania. And I've always loved the Balkans. I've been back a handful of times since then, but that was my first big, all by public transport trip when I was 23 years old there. Then, unfortunately, what happened right after that is that I got offered this amazing project. It was about smallholder farmers in Africa, and I am a smallholder farmer in Africa. And, I felt like I was perfect for it. The team felt like I was perfect for it, but it was in a different office. And this just created this drama. And because I had done other development projects. I was told they didn't want me to be a one-trick pony. I thought that was a misunderstanding of like what development is, because doing an NGO and philanthropy, and then this was like an agriculture study is totally different. Even though it's all economic development, it's very different. So I got really upset about that and ended up kind of getting like forced to do this project in Saudi Arabia that I really did not want to do. And that was like one of my like biggest professional kind of like lows. Even though that project was also really cool, and I learned a lot about like this very new sector to me, and got a lot of exposure. That was interesting, but that was really kind of hard. And I ended up spending that winter. I went with a buddy of mine from boarding school who we had been really good friends for 1 year of boarding school and then not so much the next year. So we hadn't talked that much in a while, but he was in Germany and I was going to go there for Christmas to see my family. And so I invited him to my family for Christmas and I said, let's do a trip afterwards. So we decided to go to every German speaking country in Europe. So we did this like trip from like Luxembourg into like Switzerland, and we went to Liechtenstein and like in Austria, and we did New Year's Eve of 2013 in Vienna with a friend of ours from Vienna, waltzing in the street. It was amazing. We also went to Bratislava. It was this like great trip at the time. It was really, really fun. And then I think a few weeks later, or maybe a month later, I went to the States. I went to visit one of my best friends, my Trinidadian best friend, also from boarding school in North Dakota, where she was then living. I'd never been to North Dakota. It was like my 46th state. It's also nice to be like in America and see family and see friends and stuff. And then on my way back to Dubai, I kind of took like a weird trip. I went to Macau and Hong Kong. I'd been to China before, but I hadn't been to either Macau or Hong Kong, so I decided to go to both of those, which was like a fun, I think it was like a 3 or 4 day, like 3 days in each place, which was really exciting. And then I was back in Dubai, I guess, like working on a project, another project I didn't really want to be doing, and that like it kind of continued this like professional like low. And it had just been this like 6 months of not really feeling empowered by my work. And I was focusing a lot just on the travel that I was doing and the friendships I was making. And at that same time, I had to go do a training for work in Austria. And so me and my 3 best friends at McKinsey, we decided to make a trip out of it. So we went to Venice together, and then we went to Ljubljana, in Slovenia right next door. And then we went to go do the training in Austria. And that was amazing. Like I'm still very, very close. You guys probably have seen these like Raneem and Ali on Instagram a lot. And so that was like one of our favorite times together. We were just like 23 and young and like in Europe for work, and it was just great. And on the way back, I actually stopped in San Marino for 2 days to see what was up with San Marino. And then I came back home. And then I got put on a really interesting project, which was to write a paper with a team called Women Matter. And it's a report that McKinsey used to do or still does every year on women in the workplace. And this issue was focused on the GCC. So we got to interview like the leading female businesswomen and politicians and the first engineers, etc., in the GCC. And it was so inspiring to just work with all of these incredible women and to like know all of kind of like the hardships that they went through and how much harder they had to work. And we titled the piece From the First to the Norm, because most of the women we were talking to were the first surgeon, the first politician, the first whatever. And then to now, where it's becoming the norm, and there's lots of like women coming and being educated and becoming successful in the GCC. And so that was a really exciting project to do. And again, was exciting for me in like learning about economic development. And then I kind of like 2 things happened. One, I got asked to do a project in Pakistan doing education. Again, a type of economic development project, and I was really excited about that. I'd never been to Pakistan. I was going to be there for a long time. It ended up being like 4 or 5 months. I was really, really excited about that. And, so I was going to go like live in Lahore. And at the same time, I also started dating Kelly, who I had like dated like 2 years before when I was studying abroad in Abu Dhabi, and we'd been like friends and on and off kind of since then, but we started like very seriously dating at that same time. And so that summer, when I was 23, before I turned 24, was really spent with Kelly. Because I was in Pakistan, I had like a weird visa and I wasn't able to stay for more than a week in a row, so I always had to leave every weekend. But because it was summer, I didn't want to go to Abu Dhabi, it was so hot. So I went with my girlfriend to Lebanon with some of our friends. I went to Italy for the wedding of Antonia, my friend who was in North Dakota. I went to the Seychelles for a weekend. I went to Greece, also with Kelly. She was living in Norway. I was in Pakistan, so we kind of met halfway in Greece. We had this like amazing romantic, long weekend. And then at the end of the project, I did this, my first time ever in the Pacific. So I went to the Philippines, but then I flew to Palau to learn how to scuba dive. And I also went to Guam on the way. Like I was there for only 24 hours, but I like stopped on the way there. And Palau was amazing, and learning how to scuba dive was amazing. And then I went back to Abu Dhabi. Kelly came back from Norway, and so maybe like August, September, we kind of like started what would be the next year of our life, which was mostly like based in just like being in Abu Dhabi. So, that year was, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of like what was like the key lesson. It was really about being like young and having these professional highs, doing exactly what I wanted to do, but then being forced to do stuff I really didn't want to do, and having to learn what it's like to just be an employee and do what you're told a little bit, and not necessarily always feel like you're on that right path, but then also overcoming that and like learning the lessons I could out of that. And I think also learning how to balance the personal with the professional. So even though there was some, professional lows during that year, it was one of the years that I traveled the most. It was the year that I started dating this woman that I, really loved. And so it was a year of balance, I guess, and it was a roller coaster year, a lot of impact. And I can't believe that was 7 years ago, and I can't believe I was 23 and I did all of that stuff. It seems unbelievable. I'm like so lucky I've been able to accomplish. So that was the 23rd year of my life. So I hope that you enjoyed that a little bit, and that you can share with me some of the stuff that you've had, or some of these stories that resonate with you as well.